It truly stops you in your tracks, doesn't it? Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Hmm.
I mean, a book born from the absolute rock bottom of human experience, yet it's resonated with literally millions all around the world.
It really is.
You just have to ask why. Why does a book that came out of, the unimaginable horror of concentration camps,
Yeah.
why does it speak so powerfully to so many of us today? People just navigating the everyday quest for purpose.
It's such a fundamental question, isn't it? That need for meaning, it feels like a core human drive. And I think that's exactly why Frankl's work just continues to hold such profound relevance.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. You, our listener, you actually brought this incredibly powerful book to our attention.
And it's great.
Yeah. And it's clear that these themes, meaning resilience, are the things you're deeply interested in exploring. So
Yeah.
let's really, unpack what makes this book so enduring.
It's a truly essential look, I think, at the human spirit under, well, the most extreme pressure imaginable.
Absolutely. Now, for anyone who maybe hasn't read it recently or maybe hasn't read it at all, it's essentially in two parts.
Right.
The first is Frankl's own story. Incredibly raw, honest account of his time as a prisoner. Nazi concentration camps.
Dark is the word. Unfiltered look at survival.
Yeah. And that really sets the stage, doesn't it, for the second part.
Which is where he introduces logotherapy.
Yeah.
His therapeutic approach.
Right.
The school of thought he developed. And at its heart, it's all about that profound human need for meaning. It's really remarkable how his own experiences directly shaped the theory.
You see it emerging right from that reality.
You really do.
Yeah.
The theory comes straight out of that lived horror.
And it's important to remember, isn't it, that the camps he's mostly describing, they were often smaller, less famous ones.
That's a key point. Not the massive extermination centers we often picture first, but places focused on that brutal, grinding, daily struggle for ordinary prisoners.
And then there's the preface and the postscript. They were added later.
Valuable additions.
They offer really useful insights, I think, into the book's ongoing impact and, its relevance today, sort of layers of reflection on what he originally aimed for and how it connects to our modern search for purpose.
Precisely. Those later additions give crucial context. We see how Frankl himself saw his work evolving, how it kept speaking to new generations facing, their own kinds of challenges.
Okay, so our mission today, our goal for this deep dive is really to distill the essential insights. From Frankl's experiences, yes, but also from his theory, logotherapy.
Get to the core.
Exactly. Give you, our listener, a kind of direct path to understanding his powerful message. That message about finding meaning even when things seem completely, utterly hopeless.
Finding it despite the hopeless.
Yes, we're aiming for those real aha moments, those key takeaways that you, as someone keen on gaining knowledge efficiently but thoroughly, can really grab onto and maybe even apply.
Yeah, we're not just retelling the story. We're trying to pull out that core wisdom, those sometimes surprising observations about being human that make this book so much more than just a historical account.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Arrival at the camp. Frankl paints this really vivid picture of the prisoner's initial reactions. It wasn't just immediate fear, was it?
No, it was a really complex mix, psychologically complex. Initially, yes, profound shock, even before they were officially, processed.
Right.
But he describes this odd, cold, detached curiosity about what was going to happen next, almost like the mind stepping back.
A buffer zone.
Kind of, like a mental buffer against the sheer horror unfolding, observing it almost as a way to protect oneself.
Right, like an out-of-body
Yeah.
thing, distancing. And alongside that, this immediate, almost primal instinct kicks in, survival.
Absolutely. Focusing on the smallest things,
Yeah.
clinging to any tiny shred of hope.
What offered solace then?
Well, he mentions a few things. The incredibly powerful pull of memories, loved ones, deep comfort found in religious faith for some, and astonishingly, even that dark gallows humor
Right.
as a way to cope, and even like fleeting glimpses of nature, a tree, a sunset, tiny reminders of beauty beyond the wire.
It's those small human details that really cut through, isn't it? Brings the individual experience right into focus. And then, of course, the dehumanization process started almost immediately.
Oh yes, stripped naked, heads and bodies shaved, all personal belongings just confiscated, gone.
A systematic erasure of identity.
Totally deliberate, a tactic to break them down, reduce them to numbers, interchangeable, no individuality, no history left.
And in that initial shock phase, Frankl mentions this idea of running into the wire. suicide.
Touching the electrified fence.
It seems almost paradoxical, but he observed that for some, right at the very beginning, the fear of death itself seemed strangely absent.
It really speaks to how overwhelming it all was. Death, in that immediate context of just unbearable trauma.
Yeah.
Maybe it seemed like a release, a way out of the suffering.
Okay, so as prisoners got deeper into the camp routine, that brutal, grinding life, the mental reactions changed again, didn't they?
Yes, the relentless day-to-day fight for survival, it became even more intense. And Frankl, he doesn't shy away from the grim truths.
Like betrayal.
Betrayal among prisoners, yes.
Yeah.
And that harsh understanding that, tragically, the best of us did not return. It was just a desperate environment. Self-preservation often overshadowed everything else. Understandably so.
He talks about 3 phases, right? Admission, entrenchment, and then liberation.
That's right.
And it's that second phase, entrenchment, where this deep apathy really takes hold, almost like a psychological shield.
Precisely. Apathy became a kind of mental armor, a way to just emotionally detach from the constant suffering, the bleakness. He describes a sort of regression.
Regression?
To a more primitive inner life.
Yeah.
Where the focus just narrowed completely. Immediate survival, the tiny relief of just making it through another day.
And the daily realities were just relentlessly brutal. Minimal food, constant threat of death.
And that agonizing lack of news from families. Nothing reliable. Just imagine that constant gnawing uncertainty about your loved ones.
The brutality, the injustice was just everywhere.
Absolutely endemic. Beatings for tiny infractions, often unintentional, or sometimes no reason at all, just random cruelty.
He tells that story about the guard throwing a stone.
Chilling, isn't it? Not even out of anger, just complete lack of regard, like shooting an animal. It perfectly illustrates that utter dehumanization.
And the casual cruelty, like being reprimanded for helping a disabled friend.
Just underscores the arbitrary nature of it all. No rules, no fairness, just the guard's whims.
The longing for home, for family, must have been constant torture, especially contrasted with the, the filth, the degradation.
Hard to imagine that level of squalor becoming your everyday reality.
And Frankl also mentions this cultural hibernation in the camp, but with exceptions.
Yes, interestingly, politics and religion were the 2 main exceptions.
Those 2.
Well, in the face of utter powerlessness, political rumors, even unreliable ones, offered a tiny bit of hope. A sense the outside world still existed, might intervene.
And religion.
The raw sincerity of belief. Improvised prayers in the dark. It speaks to that fundamental human need for meaning, for solace, when you're staring into the abyss.
He mentions the typhus epidemic, too, his own struggle to stay awake, avoid delirium.
Harrowing. And yet, even then, completely exhausted, physically and mentally, he was driven to reconstruct his lost manuscript.
That sheer force of will, to create, to preserve meaning, even then. What does that tell us?
It powerfully shows that innate drive for purpose, doesn't it? Even when depleted to the absolute limit, the need to create, to contribute, to leave something. It's incredibly potent.
And that weird detail about the seance.
Yeah, the spiritualistic seance in the camp. It's bizarre, definitely. But maybe it speaks to that same deep yearning for something beyond the suffering, a desperate search for answers, maybe just distraction.
A glimpse into the psyche pushed to its absolute limits, grasping for anything. But amidst all this darkness, Frankl also describes these incredibly powerful moments of meaning, even transcendence.
Oh, yes. These are the moments that really light things up, show the resilience.
Like thinking of his wife during that forced march.
Exactly, that profound experience. He suddenly realized love wasn't just a feeling tied to her physical presence. It was a deep spiritual connection. It transcended her absence, became a source of intense bliss, even right there in that desolation.
And that quote, "The salvation of man is through love and in love." So concise, but so profound given the context. Utter deprivation.
It beautifully captures a core idea of logotherapy, doesn't it? That fundamental will to meaning. Even when everything else is stripped away, the capacity to love and find meaning in that love remains. A powerful, enduring force.
He also describes that moment working in a trench. That deep spiritual connection, hearing an inner yes, seeing a light.
"Et lux in tenebris lucet," and the light shineth in the darkness. It speaks to that inner core, doesn't it? The human spirit refusing to be totally extinguished, even by the worst circumstances.
And the unexpected presence of art, the violin music, and humor.
Weapons of the soul, he called them. Self-preservation. That little joke with the surgeon, action. Action. It's just a tiny spark of defiance, isn't it? Humanity refusing to be crushed.
A momentary rebellion against despair, a way to grab back a tiny bit of control perspective when all external control is gone.
Absolutely.
He also makes that really important point about suffering being relative, the gas analogy.
Yes, that analogy of gas filling a whole chamber. Even seemingly small sufferings can feel absolutely all-consuming when they fill your entire world. When there's no other context, it really reframed how we think about our own hardships.
And those small mercies he talks about, that negative happiness, like the chance to delouse.
Such a stark contrast to the almost total lack of real positive pleasure. It certainly puts our everyday complaints into sharp perspective.
It really does. And that incredibly moving anecdote, Frankl choosing to give away his tiny bread ration.
Such a powerful illustration. Even in the most extreme conditions, the human capacity for altruism, for acting on your values, it can endure.
It really counters that cynical view, doesn't it? That it's just every person for themselves in situations like that. It shows that inner freedom, the ability to choose your response, always remains, however small.
And that's just a crucial point. Despite the horrific external conditions, Frankl insists prisoners kept that fundamental capacity, inner freedom, the ability to choose their attitude, their response to suffering. This is the bedrock of his whole philosophy.
He quotes Dostoevsky, "There is only one thing that I dread, not to be worthy of my sufferings."
Such a challenging idea, that even in immense pain, you can give it meaning through your response, by maintaining your dignity.
Absolutely. And the story of the young woman finding meaning in nature, her connection to that one tree.
With its two blossoms, it illustrates it so beautifully. The power of perspective, finding solace, a sense of life enduring, even facing death, meaning in the smallest things.
And Frankl's own technique, mentally detaching, by imagining himself lecturing about the psychology of the camp.
That deliberate objectification, viewing his own intense experience through an almost scientific lens.
It's a powerful example of, cognitive reframing.
Exactly. Consciously taking control of your internal narrative, even when the external situation is totally uncontrollable. And that Spinoza quote he uses, suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds a meaning. That really hits home there.
But Frankl also warns, very starkly, about the danger of losing hope. When that will to meaning gets extinguished, he tells that tragic story of the composer of Faints,
who dreamt of liberation on a specific date.
Yeah.
That's truly chilling. It shows just how deeply our mental state is tied to our physical well-being. When that hope was crushed by reality, his will to live just seemed to evaporate. His body gave up.
And the statistics. The increased death rate between Christmas 44 and New Year 45. Because those hopes of going home were dashed.
It's undeniable proof, isn't it? The immense power of hope, of having a sense of future meaning.
Which really underscores Frankl's central idea, that shift in perspective.
It's not about what we expect from life,
right?
But about recognizing what life expects from us. That sense of responsibility, to find the right answer to life's questions through our own actions, our conduct.
Which brings us right to logotherapy itself. Can you give us the nutshell version, the core idea of this third Viennese school of psychotherapy?
Okay, well, fundamentally, logotherapy is all about the meaning of human existence and the search each person undertakes to find that meaning in their own life. Frankl's core idea was that this will to meaning isn't secondary. It's the primary motivational force in humans.
And he deliberately sets that against Freud's will to pleasure and Adler's will to power.
Exactly. A fundamental difference in understanding what drives us. Frankl firmly believed we are driven by this deep desire for purpose, for significance, even, maybe especially, when facing suffering.
That French opinion poll he mentions.
In his own findings in Vienna, they really highlight how widespread this need for meaning is. It's deeply felt.
And when that will to meaning is frustrated, blocked, he called that existential frustration, which can lead to neurogenic neuroses. What are those?
Okay, so these are neuroses that don't come from, say, traditional psychological conflicts, but from the neurological dimension.
It's a realm of meaning.
Exactly. Meaning, values, spiritual concerns. Think of it like feeling lost, deeply unsatisfied, even if things look okay on the surface. That nagging sense something important is missing, even if you can't name it.
Like that example of the American patient,
whose career dissatisfaction was mistaken for father issues.
Yeah.
But the real problem, a lack of meaning in his work.
Wow. So a frustrated will to meaning can actually show up as psychological symptoms. And Frankl also talks about the importance of tension, healthy tension.
Yes, the gap between what we've achieved and what we still feel we ought to accomplish. He called it no dynamics.
Like striving towards a goal.
Exactly. That striving, having something meaningful to aim for, is actually essential for mental well-being. It pulls us forward. He uses that analogy of architects strengthening an arch by increasing the load. The right kind of challenge makes us stronger.
And this existential vacuum, this widespread feeling of inner emptiness, meaninglessness, he saw it as a big problem in the 20th century.
And arguably even more so now, right?
Mm.
He linked it to the erosion of instincts, the decline of traditions. Without those guideposts, people might fall into conformism or follow totalitarian ideas. Or experience that deep boredom, Sunday neurosis,
Yeah.
depression, aggression, addiction. Often misguided attempts to fill that inner void.
Okay, so if meaning is so crucial, how do we actually find it, according to Frankl? What are the paths?
He outlines three main ways. First, by creating work or doing a deed, making a contribution.
Okay.
Second, by experiencing something, beauty, nature, or encountering someone, especially through love.
Love is key here.
Very key. He saw it as the only way to fully grasp another person's essence, see their potential, help them actualize it.
And the third way?
The third, and perhaps the most profound, is through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
So even in hopeless situations,
We can find meaning by how we choose to face it, transforming tragedy into a personal triumph. That incredibly moving story of the elderly doctor grieving his wife.
yes. His suffering spared her the same pain. That became his meaning.
Exactly. Finding meaning in the suffering, not by escaping it. But Frankl's clear. Suffering isn't necessary for meaning.
Right.
Meaning is possible despite unavoidable suffering. Unnecessary suffering is just masochism.
He also mentions Edith Weisskopf Jolson's point about the pressure to be happy.
Yeah, that societal pressure can actually make things worse when we inevitably face hardship. We feel bad about feeling bad.
It's another layer of burden. And that personal moment for Frankl, finding the page from the Hebrew prayer book?
The Shema Yisrael, he saw it as a direct personal challenge to live his thoughts.
Finding meaning in what seems random through your own beliefs.
Precisely.
He also talks about meta-clinical problems. People seeking meaning from therapists, not just clergy anymore.
Reflects societal shifts, doesn't it? Maybe a growing awareness of these big existential questions in a more secular time. And he shares that fascinating logodrama exercise.
With the mother who lost a son and the woman with the superficially successful life.
Yes, imagining their lives from the very end. That perspective shift helped the mother find profound meaning in caring for her disabled son. And it starkly revealed the emptiness in the other woman's life.
It's about seeing what truly holds lasting value.
Exactly. Reflecting from the end point clarifies values, gives meaning to present actions.
Then he brings in this idea of super meaning, something beyond our full understanding.
Yes, the ultimate meaningfulness of life might just transcend our rational grasp. Our finite minds can't fully comprehend it. We have to accept that inability.
Like his daughter asking why God sent measles.
A perfect illustration. Sometimes logic falls short when facing life's bigger mysteries.
He also tackles life's transitoriness. The past isn't lost.
No, it becomes a full granary. Deeds, joys, sufferings. They're permanent, can't be undone. Having been is also a kind of being, he says, perhaps the surest kind.
That's a comforting thought, reframing time. The pessimist sees loss, the activist treasures the past.
Right, finding pride even in bravely suffered hardships.
And he gets practical too. Logotherapeutic techniques like paradoxical intention, how does that work?
Fascinating stuff. It involves deliberately trying to bring about the very thing you fear.
Counterintuitive.
Totally, like the doctor afraid of sweating or the bookkeeper with writer's cramp. By trying to make it happen, you remove the fear's power. The anxiety about the fear often fuels the problem. Trying to do it breaks the cycle.
Like the stutterer who couldn't stutter when trying to.
Exactly. It disrupts those anxiety patterns. You reclaim some control.
And finally, his psychiatric credo, respecting human dignity, always.
Always. He warns against that nothing-butness view, reducing people to just their conditions. It denies freedom, choice.
He insists we always retain freedom.
Freedom to choose our attitude, our stance towards conditions, even with biological, psychological limits. His own survival is powerful proof.
And that incredible story of Dr. J, the mass murderer of Steinhoff.
Who transformed in prison, became compassionate, moral. It shows that capacity for change exists in everyone, regardless of the past.
The potential is never fixed.
Never. And his credo, even incurably psychotic individuals retain human dignity. That's key to a humanized psychiatry. See the person behind the disease? Humans are self-determining within limits.
That quote about the camps, swine and saints.
Man has both potentialities within himself. Which one is actualized depends on decisions, but not on conditions. Powerful.
And he wraps it up with this idea of tragic optimism. Sounds like a contradiction.
On the surface, yes, but it's about maintaining hope despite tragedy, based on our human capacities, turning suffering into achievement, deriving change from guilt, finding incentive in life's fleeting nature.
And you can't just command optimism or love or faith.
No, they ensue naturally from finding a reason. He contrasts the American be happy command with the idea that happiness follows finding meaning.
Like laughter needing a reason, hyperintention spoils things.
Exactly. Focusing directly on the outcome, like happiness or pleasure, can ruin it.
Right.
Focus on the meaning behind it instead.
He mentions give-up-itis too, linked to lost meaning.
Yes, in extreme situations. Losing that meaning orientation. He draws parallels to the no future mindset, drug use. Existential despair is human, but can become pathogenic depression, aggression, addiction.
His advice to someone suicidal?
Emphasize the unknown future, the possibility of finding meaning. Urge them to survive just to see that day.
And that experiment with the Boy Scouts. Shared purpose reduces aggression.
Highlights the power of collective meaning. Logotherapy focuses on meaning in each situation, not just life overall. Guided by conscience, our values.
Attitudinal heroism, maintaining dignity against unchangeable suffering.
Yes, like the quiet heroism in the Warsaw Ghetto. He also addresses guilt-preferring responsibility, overcoming it by growth, and argues against collective guilt.
And his final thought loops back. Life's transitoriness as an incentive.
Live as if you were living for the second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you were about to act now. A powerful call to action. Make the best of every moment.
He warns against nihilism, learned meaninglessness.
And emphasizes logotherapy is undogmatic, calls for deglorification, independent thinking. Contrast Freud on hunger with the camp reality. Individual differences intensified, both depravity and saintliness, like Father Kolbe. It's a really multifaceted message indeed. It's just an enduring testament, isn't it, to the power of the human spirit and the absolutely fundamentally universal need for meaning to get us through life's challenges.
So for you, our listener, just reflecting on this deep dive into Frankl's profound work, a few key ideas really stand out, don't they? Firstly, just the undeniable power of actively finding meaning, even maybe especially in immense suffering. That feels central.
Absolutely transformative.
Secondly, that crucial understanding that even in the most oppressive circumstances, we always keep some inner freedom. Freedom to choose our response, our attitude.
That core freedom.
And finally, this core concept of the will to meaning. That it's a primary driving force in all our lives. These aren't just, abstract ideas. They feel like practical frameworks you can actually use to navigate your own challenges, your own search for purpose.
Definitely. They're not just historical observations. They offer real guidance for our everyday lives. Finding meaning, resilience, understanding what truly matters.
So thinking about that, the profound impact of finding meaning even in hardship, maybe ask yourself, what small but significant step could you take today to connect more deeply with your own sense of purpose, even with just the ordinary stuff of daily life?
Or maybe reflecting on Frankl's idea that life is always questioning us.
Right.
What question do you feel life might be asking you right now, and how could you maybe start to explore an answer? Definitely something worthwhile to keep thinking about.
It really is. And if this deep dive has resonated with you, we really encourage you delve deeper into Frankl's work.
Absolutely. Revisit Man's Search for Meaning with this discussion in mind, or maybe explore logotherapy more broadly. There's so much more there.
Thank you so much for sharing this incredibly important source with us and for joining us on this deep dive. We sincerely hope it's given you some truly valuable and lasting insights.